Welcome to this edition of 42 Stories Anthology Presents. In this interview, we have Karla Hailer. Did I say Hailer correctly?
Yes, you did.
All right. So, yeah, as I was talking about before we started, I study pronunciation to teach it in Japan. You're also a teacher, right?
I just retired from teaching fifth grade for a couple of decades.
Congratulations. Would you like
Thank you.
to give the viewers a bio while you're talking about retiring?
So I have a very varied background. I started as a mechanical artist and I read my first review of Aldous PageMaker, said, "Oh, I'm not going to have a job in 5 years," and went into high tech. And I like to say I made the world safe for bad typography because I went to work for a company called Bitstream. We created fonts to be used on all computer platforms because at the time, only Apple had pretty fonts. So we made it safe for everybody to make ransom note typography. Um, High tech in Boston at the time had a policy we used to joke about called women with children first when it came to layoffs. So when I got laid off, I raised my boys and I worked as a journalist for several years. My big thing was translating larger political issues down to a more local level
Hmm.
and hopefully with some humor. I used to describe myself as a slightly acerbic social critic when in those days. And when papers took over, when paper chains started taking over the smaller newspapers, they realized they didn't need to pay columnists, that people would write for free. I was not one of them. So I ended up going back into teaching. And teaching fifth graders has been a blast, but it's time to move forward with my author career on that score. Um, Fifth graders are a great age because it's before they know everything, but it's that point where they're starting to be their own person and not their parents' kid. So it's a wonderful, wonderful age to teach. It's a lot of fun. I grew up in Boston. I am a Boston sports fan. I can't help it. It's genetic. I got it from my mother. Mostly I am a Red Sox and Bruins fan, and I am also a huge fan of the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League. We have one of the original six teams. They just started last year, the Boston Fleet, and I love that this is a team where women are being paid a full-time salary. So they don't have to hold two or three jobs in order to play professional hockey.
Hmm.
It's awesome and it's great hockey. So if you get a chance to catch a PWHL game this year, it's fabulous, fabulous hockey. I can't help it. I'm a sports fan.
Definitely do that.
Yeah.
So about sports, you're actually in the
Mhm.
sports chapter. Why don't you
Yes, I am.
give the viewers your a reading of your story? I think that the best way actually to get a story is orally. You know, that's the original way that we heard stories was orally.
Exactly.
So when
Exactly.
people say things like they feel like they're cheating from audiobooks, it's actually the other way
No,
around. They're cheating by
that's,
reading.
yeah. We used to tell stories by campfires. That's how we
Yeah,
all grew up, right?
right.
Scary stories in the dark with the flashlight under your chin. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
So let's hear
the,
yours.
the story I wrote was about the very first time I went to Fenway Park.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's called The True Sacred Cathedral of My Rebellion. I had never been to Fenway Park before. Girls weren't allowed to love baseball, but I did. Defying all conventions, I purchased my ticket for a bleacher seat. Upon entering the sacred cathedral, I had only one thought. Finally, I am home.
Yeah. I remember when I read your story, my first thoughts were I love it. And that's
Oh,
because I
thank you.
just love stories about independence, especially for women, there needs to be more
Yeah,
representation. And too many people kind of try to be that when they're not that. And
right.
when I was on a date with my fiance for the first time, she's like, "What do you like about women?" And I said, "Independence, strength." And she's like,
Yeah.
"Really? Oh, that's great." And I go, "Yeah." And
This will work.
so when I read your story, I went, "This works for me." Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but the
Well,
readers also loved it. Yeah.
yeah. I will say that growing up, I grew up at a time when girls were not supposed to be into sports. You know, sports were for guys. Girls were not allowed to play Little League. Just about the point I aged out of Little League, Maria Pepe sued Little League of America for disqualifying her team because she was on it. It
Oh,
helped that her father was a lawyer. She had the National Organization of Women in the ACLU behind her as well. And the one time I met Stephen King and we were able to talk, we literally sat there for half an hour talking about how Little League keeps women out of baseball by creating the softball league
yeah.
and shunting girls into softball, which is not the same as baseball.
Hmm.
So the fact that the two of us bonded over this very passionate belief was all my friends like, oh, did you tell them about this, about writing, about this, about that? No,
Yeah.
we talked about baseball.
Well, he started off as a sports writer, and
Yes,
so
he did.
that's a great way to get into a
Yeah,
conversation with him. He still loves sports, from what I hear.
yes, he does. And he's a huge Red Sox fan. And in fact, he and a friend of his wrote a book about the 2004 Red Sox that actually aged well. It's 20 years old now. And I was rereading it over the summer. And yeah, it still holds up. So
Hmm.
even though it was about that specific team and that specific year, the feelings he goes through as a Red Sox fan is still very, very identifiable. So, but yeah, I grew up at a time when girls were not allowed to be baseball fans, and yet I was. And the song "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," interestingly enough, was actually written about a woman who, like, men are trying to woo her, and she keeps saying, "No, if you want to win my heart, take me out to the ball game."
Hmm.
And Bob Dylan did a whole thing about it on his he used to have a radio show on XM where he would do like the old time radio hour where he would just do a whole series of songs about a theme that week. And the week he did baseball, he actually told the story and read the whole set of lyrics for it,
Hmm.
which suddenly made the song a whole lot better for me.
It makes me want to listen to it again.
Yeah.
There's a surprise I'd like to show you since you're such a baseball fan.
Okay.
But first, I should ask, what are your thoughts about the Brooklyn Dodgers?
I have a lot of admiration about the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Hmm.
Um, Jackie Robinson, if you go back and you read Red Barber's books, he has a whole thing about heroes, and he has a whole thing not just about Jackie Robinson, but about Branch Rickey and how Branch Rickey prepared Jackie Robinson for the abuse that would be hurled at him on
Yeah,
the field. And just you gotta it just the LA Dodgers have nothing on the Brooklyn Dodgers. I don't care how good they are. That there's something about that team that was just amazing.
it was
You know,
magic. Yeah.
it really was.
Yeah. So what I want to show you is the cover. I purchased rights for the book
Yep. Yep.
for an original Jackie Robinson photo from the New
Cool.
York Times, and it's going to be the cover of the sports chapter. And then later we're going to have a sports chapter. Well, we're going to sell the chapters individually later on,
Okay.
but I'm going to focus on the anthology for a while.
All right.
Also, so that'll eventually be the cover of the book itself too, for that book. So let me give that. I'll give you a preview of it and get your thoughts. Yeah, it's and they made it high resolution. Can you see it?
What is it? Not yet. Oh, there it. I love that photo.
Yeah,
I've always loved that photo.
yeah, it's a famous one
It's
that
a
I was
great one.
taken by Patrick
Yep.
Burns.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's always been a fabulous photo.
yeah. No, it's a part of the anthology, so pretty happy about that.
Yes. I'm glad to be part of that. That is exciting.
Okay.
So,
Let's get back to your interview though. As
yeah.
an icebreaker question, before we get into writing,
Mhm.
tell me if there's an animal that what is it that I want to say? So the best animal on earth. That's what I want to say. What would you say it was?
Cats.
Hmm.
Cats without a doubt. Cats have boundaries. You know, if they want you to pat them, drop everything. They want the attention now. If they don't want you to, they will bite you. They will scratch you. They don't care. I'm done. Goodbye. Walk away. So they have very clear about, but they're basically, furry, purry, fuzzy, wuzzy, roly poly balls of love. And they're just absolutely fabulous. Capybaras are a close second because capybaras are just giant guinea pigs and they're awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I wouldn't
was
mind having a
shocked.
capybara.
A capybara.
Yeah.
Well, you know how cats will, when they really trust you and love you, they'll bring you presents like a dead bug.
Oh, yeah.
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 So I was shocked the first time I saw that, but then I understood they're saying they respect me or something.
Yeah. Yep. They're sharing their food with you.
Oh, wow.
Um,
They're so
unless you are my cat, Odin. I have a cat, he's half Maine Coon cat. Odin, Mr. Odin's. And Odin is a live or let live kind of cat.
Hmm.
The house we used to live in had a mouse problem at one point. And I saw him one day, he was sleeping on the floor, and a mouse walked past him. He opened one eye, closed it, no problem, until the mouse went over to his food bowl and started eating his kibble.
Oh,
The next morning I came down, found the mouse lying on the floor in front of the sink, and he had just, basically disemboweled the thing. It was like, yeah, you know, I'm cool with you until you eat my food. You eat my food, you're dead.
wow.
So he's pretty chill that way. But
Because the boundaries you were mentioning.
yep, yep, he totally has boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
We had a 20-year-old in my childhood, this cat that lived like over 20 years, a Cornish Rex. Are you familiar with them?
yep,
Yeah, but they're so loyal, and it was loyal to everyone in the
yeah,
family, and they love being really close.
yeah. I once had a cat that thought it was a dog. Her name was Pussela, which is the Yiddish word for cat.
Yeah.
And she would literally walk me from my apartment across the parking lot to the MBTA stop every morning. And she knew what time I normally got home from work, and she would sit in the bushes and wait for me. And she would come out and walk me home.
Oh.
And I used to whistle for her.
Hmm.
So we had like a little whistle for her. And I would come up from the tee, and I would give a little whistle, and she'd walk out from the bushes and walk me home. And someone finally stopped me one day and they said, "How did you train your cat to do that?" I was like, "Oh, you don't train a cat. They just do it. They
Yeah.
just." So, and
Hmm.
yeah, she was an awesome cat.
Yeah.
So,
Later, before I moved, there was a cat like that before I moved from America to Japan.
yep,
And it would wait in some bushes for me to come home. And it chose me, I guess, as its owner. Would
yep,
just sit out there, and eventually I named the cat because I was going to move to Japan. I think I gave it a name like Akira. And
yeah,
I would just call Akira. I never even fed the cat. It would just wait and say hi to
yep,
me and come and say purr and let me pet
yep.
it. And
And when I was in college, we had a cat that chose us.
hmm.
We called him Moses because he thought he was the chosen kitty.
Oh.
So,
Oh.
and he was an attack cat.
Hmm.
If he thought somebody was threatening me, he would attack them. And there was a German Shepherd on our street that would charge me. It was one of those dogs that had been trained to charge right up to you to scare you, and it would stop about 6 inches away and just bark until you walked around it.
Okay.
And one day it did that, and Moses was sitting in a tree branch overhanging the sidewalk,
Yeah.
and the German Shepherd started charging me, and all of a sudden he jumped down and did what we called a Nantucket sleigh ride, which is an old whaling term, and he just latched onto the back of the dog. The dog ran away yelping until it finally stopped and went to roll over, and Moses jumped off and walked away.
Oh.
And the dog never came near me after that. But it was just kind of, again, it's that boundary thing. Nope, that's my human. Go away. Leave her alone. That's entirely what it was.
Yeah.
So I love that cats have boundaries.
Yeah. And they're protective too.
Yes, yes, they are. They're very loyal and they're very protective. You take care of them, they will take care of you.
Okay. I'd like to go to some other questions.
Sure.
The process is going to be 4 questions that are sort of
Okay.
icebreakers, and then 2 sort of long writer questions. For
All
the
right.
for the second sort of short-ish question, I want to
Mhm.
talk about books and authors. I know a lot of people say, well, every writer gets asked this,
Yeah.
but I think it's an important question because this is what inspires writers.
Right.
So I'd like to know about books, authors who inspire you.
Yeah. So I would have to say oh God, books and authors. It's such a tough one, especially when you're a writer.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, and I'm going to go back to the sports theme of George Plimpton. Now, George Plimpton was a sports writer. And he and guys like Frank DeFord and the original staff at Sports Illustrated, they didn't recap a box score. They told the story of the game. are absolutely fabulous. My mother was a reader, and she always read whatever the current bestsellers were. So we had a copy of George Plimpton's Paper Lions on the shelf, and I was way too young reading it. But I remember reading it, and what it was is Plimpton tried out as the quarterback for the Detroit Lions. And he wasn't that good a football player, but it was so that he could write this article. And what happened is I read this book, and my first thought was, you can get paid for writing about sports? Where do I sign up? How much better does this get? And years later, I had a dear friend by the name of George Mitrovich, and George ran the Great Fenway Writers series. And one day he was asking me, "Oh, how'd you get into writing?" And I told him that story, and he just starts laughing. George Plimpton had died like a year or two earlier, and he said, "George was a good friend of mine. I wish he could have met you, because he would have been so honored that he inspired you like that." Um, one of his later pieces, which inspired one of my oldest son, who's also a writer, was The Curious Case of Siddhartha Finch. Sid Sid is spelled with two D's, where Sid is raised by Tibetan monks in the Himalayas, and he throws a fastball that's so fast, the only way the catcher can train for it is by having someone go up in the Goodyear blimp and drop a baseball down for him to catch in his glove to get the velocity of Sid's pitches. And it's just a fantastic story. It was the April Fool's edition of Sports Illustrated, probably back in the 90s. It's a great little story. So I recommend people go look that up. I read more than sports, clearly. I'm a big history person. John Meacham, David McCullough, Rob Chernow, Doris Kearns Goodwin. I absolutely love the fact that I have a Kindle so I don't break my arms carrying all their books. My love of speculative fiction or science fiction, whatever you want to call it, because I do write steampunk under the name Frances DeLisle. Ursula K. Le Guin, she really ignited my passion for fantasy, and H.G. Wells for science fiction or speculative fiction, however you want to call it. I read Henry David Thoreau, or I should say I misread Henry David Thoreau. And what started as you need to read this in school quickly became someone who opened up a whole new world to me. And I actually just recently gave a talk at the Thoreau Society annual gathering on how I misread Walden at the age of 15 and ended up becoming a gardener. So, yeah. So those are some pretty big influences on me. A lot more too, but we'll keep it there.
Well, I mean, who doesn't misread Thoreau when you said that?
Oh,
And
especially
also
when you're
Wallace.
15.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in high school. They hand you this book. Here, go read this, and
And
it's
it's like a
like,
tome.
yeah. But it's so fascinating. People don't realize that Thoreau was a surveyor. He was a naturalist, and in fact, he was working on a calendar of when everything bloomed or came into season in Concord.
Yeah.
That's now being used to study climatology and climate change.
Yeah. And don't have to
And
do that too.
yeah, it's just fascinating what he did. He was the first person to do a depth math of Walden Pond. He would go out on the ice and he would drill a hole and he would drop a plumb line down and measure it. It's absolutely amazing what the man did. And most people think of him as, oh, you went off and lived in the woods. Well, not really, because Walden Pond actually wasn't woods at that time. Emerson got the land for cheap because that whole slope of the pond had been clear cut for wood in Concord.
Yeah.
And so he got the wood he got the land for cheap. Thoreau built his shed mostly out of leftover materials from the Concord Railroad. And I recommend people go check out the site, because actually where his cabin was located, you can't see the pond from where it was located. He's actually in like a little interesting geological sort of hole there. And I also recommend Dr. Robert Thorson's book on Walden Pond, A Guide to Walden Pond, to understand both the literary, the geological, and the spiritual nature of that one little site in our country and how it influenced so much our thinking, of our modern thinking.
All right, I take a note on that. Thanks.
Yeah.
As someone who's also an artist, I bet there's a lot of artists you like too. Right.
Oh God, yeah. Um, I Raphael. When I go back to I don't go back to Michelangelo. I don't go back to Leonardo. I go back to Raphael when I look at the Italian Renaissance. Um, one of my friends who was an art history major in college was convinced I was a Raphaelian model in a past life.
Huh.
And
What's that?
yeah, well, my grandfather, before he died, gave my grandmother a copy of the Madonna of the Chair.
Oh.
Um, and when I was growing up, my grandmother used to say, "Oh, that's Carlsy. That's Carlsy up there. That's Carlsy." And I never saw it. And then one day I happened to have on like a bandana around my head and I was sitting underneath it. And my mother was like, "Oh my God, Paul, come here, come here." And my father walked in and they were both like astonished because I looked exactly like the Madonna. And when we went to Italy a few years ago, I was like, I have to see that. We have to go to Florence. I have to see this painting for real.
So you did?
And I did. And I'm sitting there, I'm staring at it, and the guard is like, "Oh my God, that's you." And we're just kind of like looking at it. My husband walks in the room and he looks at the portrait and he walks around the room and he sits down next to me and goes, "So did you find the painting?" I'm like, "It's right there." Like, "Oh, okay."
I can kind of
So,
see it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it was yeah, that I'd say that's my Italian heritage. I'm my grandmother was Italian. Um it was never clear if she was actually born in Boston or on the way to Boston with her family, because that was back before you had babies in hospitals. So you just filed birth certificates as you could,
Hmm.
or when they took the census. So her birth certificate says she was born in Boston, but we were never really fully sure if she was or not.
Hmm.
So, but she did grow up in the north end of Boston in the old Anthony commercial, the person Anthony, the spaghetti commercial.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
so that's what I like to say. That was the Italian in me.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Um,
The photos, I could totally see it
yeah,
online.
yeah.
Hmm.
And Peter Max, absolutely adore Peter Max, New York artist. He was real big in the 60s with his, like, he was putting art on the sides of transit buses and things like that. He wanted to make art accessible to everybody.
Oh.
And big in the pop art movement. And I've met him a few times. Really interesting character. Um, he often says if he hadn't been an artist, he would have been an astronomer because he spent part of his childhood in the Himalayas
Hmm.
and on his way to New York. His family went from Russia to the Himalayas to Israel to New York. And his work is just, I've always loved his work. Big fan of Milton Glaser, who literally changed the way we view the world. He's the reason why Times New Roman is the standard font that is used across all corporate communications
Yeah.
for the most part. Real nice guy. He started as a calligrapher with a bunch of people I knew, one of my teachers and eventually one of my bosses. So yeah, yeah. Um, art is amazing. I absolutely love, my favorite artist recently has been Bob Waldmere. And most people won't recognize that name, but they know Fillmore from Cars.
Hmm.
Fillmore is based on Bob. And originally Fillmore's name was supposed to be Waldmere, but he was a really strict vegetarian, real, vegan. And when he found out that the Pixar was going to do a deal with McDonald's, he did not want his name associated with McDonald's at all. So
Oh.
they changed it to Fillmore.
Hmm.
But he did what a form of art that I love, which is urban sketching, where he would just go out and draw what he was seeing at the moment. If you drive along Route 66, you will see these postcards along the way that he drew. And I had actually, it was funny, before I discovered Bob, I had seen these postcards and I was grabbing them at each stop when we were driving up Route 66 once. I was like, "Oh my God, I love these." And I was buying them all the way. And I met someone who knew Bob and actually gave me a copy of Bob's map of Route 66,
Hmm.
which I used to use when I was teaching the difference between a political map versus a geological map versus strict geography versus story maps and things like that. And it never failed to capture a student's imagination. They would always glom onto one little thing and they would go and look it up because something about the art would grab them, and I love Bob's work. His work is amazing. We lost him a few years ago to cancer, but his work is still out there, and it's still along Route 66. And in fact, his old VW bus, which was, he converted it to vegetable oil long before that was a trend.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he used to drive up and down Route 66 and get that. His father invented the corn dog.
Hmm.
Um, it's like these weird little facts I found out while I was driving up and down Route 66. It was really kind of cool.
Huh.
But his van is in a museum outside of Chicago.
Hmm.
It's like a car museum of some kind. We got there, it was closed by the time we got there, but for the night. So we didn't get to see his van, but his old VW bus is in there.
Hmm.
So if you're in Illinois, go check it out.
Oh, will do. If you're ever in Japan, they call a corn dog an American dog,
Okay.
which was kind of funny. I go, really? I guess it makes sense. It was made there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just some really cool artists out there. I'm always finding new artists. It's always a lot of fun.
Well, I got you on the topic of creatives. How about songs or bands? Anything that comes to mind?
Oh God, Jimmy Buffett could tell a story, couldn't he?
Yeah.
Love Jimmy Buffett. He could really transport somebody. Loved his music. I am a strong supporter of Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers song Roadrunner as being the rock and roll song of Massachusetts.
Hmm.
Because it literally is filled with Massachusetts landmark. There's been every year some school group always files a sample legislation, like when you're teaching civics. And every so often somebody is rock and roll to the rock and roll song of Massachusetts to be Roadrunner. Um, always be, it's always a good one. I listen to a lot of classical music. I listen to a lot of odd stuff. I'm a big, well, I'm an old punk. So, and one current band I listen to a lot, they do shanty punk. They're out of England. They're called Skinny Lister. Absolutely love them. Uh, I saw the Dropkick Murphys before they were famous. Seen them also after since they've been famous. Um, you name it. If it's good music, I'll listen to it. Uh, Bruce Springsteen's another one. Absolutely love his storytelling. I always tell somebody who's like kind of stuck in their lives to look up the song "The Morning of Our Lives" by Jonathan Richman and the Modern
A good
Lovers.
one.
It's a great song. It's a great little song.
Yeah, anyone stuck should definitely listen to that. You're right.
Yeah, yeah. That's my go-to when I have writer's block.
Hmm. I just play. I'm pretty average then. I just listen to the Eye of the Tiger.
Ah.
Not special like that one. It's just very average.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
that get when I was a runner, I used to hear that every single road race I would go to. Somehow they would be blaring that one. I'd be like, oh, not again.
yeah, but sometimes I go for other songs. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
just be that one.
Yeah, but that's the classic.
Hmm. What are some places you love?
Oh God. Well, I am a Boston girl. I love New England. I won't lie. And again, the Modern Lover song New England, that's it in a nutshell. But I love Italy. I loved Amsterdam. In fact, I'm thinking about if I were to move someplace else, I would move to Amsterdam. San Miguel de Allende in Mexico, absolutely beautiful.
Hmm.
The history, it's scored, the colors, everything about San Miguel and that area up in the mountains of Mexico just blew me away. Absolutely blew me away.
Hmm.
Um, I could very easily spend a year in Venice. I could very easily go back to Germany. I love Germany so much. France, not so much. I was like, France. Um, I sometimes wish that I could have like a little cottage on the shore in England. Yeah, maybe down in Penzance or something. That to me would be kind of cool. But
Yeah,
yeah,
uh, I hear
but I am a
you.
Boston girl.
Germany is great though. I think
Yeah.
you got something with that. It was I spent New Year's there in 2017. I've never
Mm,
New Year's party like that. The whole city in Berlin was
yeah.
all the party. Everyone was happy. No one arguing. Everybody was just having fun. Just
Yep.
New Year's Eve there is amazing. And the Netherlands too, also, yeah.
Yeah.
Also a
Yeah.
great place. A few of the store owners there were a little rude, I think because they see too many tourists, but
Yeah.
but it's nice. Yeah.
Well, I was an exchange student to Germany. when I was in high school, and I lived in Saarbrücken, which is right on the French border.
Okay.
And absolutely fell in love with Germany back then. And when we went to Amsterdam, and it was what, 2019, I had done Duolingo Dutch before we went over. And every time I'd walk into some place and start speaking to a store owner or restaurant person in Dutch, they would immediately switch over to German.
Oh, because why
It was
not?
kind of like that. Oh, thank you for trying, sweetheart. You know.
Do you speak
So,
German? Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
ein bisschen, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you speak Yiddish, so that's
Yeah,
good.
I speak a little bit of Yiddish too. And
I've forgotten so much Yiddish.
yeah, but Yiddish and German are very close, so which is partially why I understand Yiddish.
You know that it's on Duolingo, or it was? I don't know if it's still
Yes, I
on.
do. It's I had a friend who grew up in New York. His parents had emigrated from Russia, and they lived in the village, but it was like a Jewish community in the village. So he grew up speaking Yiddish. He had to learn English to go to school. And he still talks like this sometimes. Like if he's going, he said, and it's just so funny because I'm like, Ron, you're falling into it again. And he will just automatically. The beautiful thing about Yiddish, an insult in Yiddish is just beautiful. They'll say things like, "May you have a room, may you have a house with 100 rooms and a stomach ache in every one of them."
Yeah.
You know, it's just that lovely little twist. You know, that makes it so much fun.
And even some of the compliments sound like insults.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
It's a language of humor. That's what I love about
Yes. Yes.
it. But I want to talk about your writing at this point. So
Okay.
why don't you tell viewers about your writer's circle, and also if you have an artist circle as an artist.
Okay. Well, as an artist, I belong to the Urban Sketchers in Boston, and they've been really fabulous in terms of helping me. I also belong to the American Society of Botanical Artists, although I'm never courageous enough to share my work with them because these are people who like do those beautiful illustrations of plants you see in textbooks and things like that. And I'm always like, yeah, I've got a flower. But the Urban Sketchers are a lot more forgiving, which is really lovely. And they're just a great, great group to work with. Writing wise, I belong to a group run by Dan Wilcox called Activated Authors. Actually, we're now deactivated authors. And we're a closed writing group. It's an international group. A lot of the folks are from England, but they have been a fabulous group for as both a sounding board and encouragement and things like that. So for example, when I put up my authors page and said, all right, guys, what do you think? And they all came back with criticism. We were able to adjust and tweak from there. They have been just absolutely fabulous. We have one guy in the group who the other day was like, he released his second book and he was panicking about something. I was like, do you think this might tie back to the fact that when you released your first book, it was in the middle of the pandemic and you didn't get the reaction you thought you were going to get? And we were able to like work through different things. So that's fabulous. I'm also a member of Sarah Cannon's Heart Breathings group, and we do a lot of sprints online. You know, the Pomodoro sprints where you set a timer for usually it's 20 minutes. Some people set it for longer. Some people usually it's 20 minutes with a 5-minute break.
Hmm.
And we chat and we encourage each other and we share each other's links and things with everybody. Sarah's an amazing woman to begin with, and she's created a very beautiful writing community. The other group I love is that I'm part of is Sacha Black's Rebel Authors. Sasha is a British novelist. She writes a lot of nonfiction, and excuse me a second.
Oh, go for it.
She writes a lot of nonfiction. She also writes
Cheers.
she also writes sapphic romance, and she is hysterical. She has a fabulous podcast out there. She does drop the F-bomb a lot, and if you read her nonfiction stuff, you can hear it in her voice. Swears and all, it's fabulous. Very real, but again, really wonderfully encouraging group. One of the things I'm working on under my name is a piece of middle grade fiction where I wanted to take that Thoreau, and I'm like, kids don't understand the transcendental movement when it gets dumped on them in high school. So I thought, what if I wrote middle grade fiction with that Pride and Prejudice and zombie, or that Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayers vibe?
Hmm.
So it's a book on Henry David Thoreau goes to Walden because Emerson wants him to deal with a Kelpie, which is a Scottish water demon,
Yeah.
sort of. Yeah. He has to deal with a Kelpie that's been dropped there accidentally. And because Thoreau, of course, he's not really a pacifist, but he's very nonviolent. He's very, we live with nature, we live in and with nature, not against it. And what do you do if you have to deal with a Kelpie?
Yeah.
And
That'd be great to read that.
it and so in the Rebel Authors group, we have a critique group. So I submitted the first chapter, and I got some really great feedback, because where Thoreau is such a huge part of American education, it's not in Australia or in England. So a couple of the people reading it were like, "Oh, now I have to go read about Thoreau because this guy sounds kind of interesting."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Yes, I have done it." Yes. So those are I love groups like that, because we're just really supportive of each other. It takes writing, which is really a solitary thing, and makes it more social in a way that as an introvert you can deal with.
Yeah. I don't really believe in just people just being introverts. I think people have stages
Yeah,
that they change. There's some
yeah,
points when an introvert can be extroverted, but maybe some
exactly.
people are mostly introverted. But
Yeah,
anyways, I think that every writer's a little introverted. So as
yeah.
an introverted writer, what inspires you?
Oh, what inspires me? What doesn't inspire me?
Yeah, to
It,
make
it,
art, to make writing, all that.
yeah. I'm in a beautiful part of the world. I mean, New England really is beautiful. And I can go for a walk through the woods, and suddenly a whole story about, like, you see a red blaze on a tree on like a hiking trail.
Yeah.
Usually the red blazes, red stands for roadway, connects to a roadway or an exit. Um, but I see that and I think back to like fairy tale lore and how fairies have an aversion to red.
Oh yeah.
And like, ooh, what if this was a safe way through a fairy kingdom? I ask myself questions like that all the time when I'm out. I was in Venice and we saw a gazebo, and it happened to be overcast that day. And I was like, ooh, that looks like it was a haunted merry-go-round. And I have this whole story kind of in notes in one of my journals from when we were traveling, of a haunted merry-go-round in Venice, and like a whole sort of dark romance around these notes in Carnival, because we were there right after Carnival. And I was like, ooh, this could be, and that will probably show up at some point. It's still percolating.
Hmm.
So it's just what inspires me, I'll be out and I get a question in my head, or I see a scene in my head and I go, oh, that's got to go down on paper now.
Yeah, and then you have this whole outline process I'm really curious about because you expand into this whole world. So why don't you tell me about that?
So outlining is funny. Outlining is I'm what used to be called a pantser.
Mhm.
And the way I would outline would be uh where the plot points go. So it would be like everything blows up here, or where like one of the pinch points would happen would be like, this is why we can't have nice things. That was like, so like I would have the story in my head and I'd be like, okay, that's where these things happen. Um, I've been using a software called Fictionary, which helps a lot. That's been helping me be a little bit more focused in my outlining and making sure I hit plot points, things like that. Um, I also had to teach kids how to pre-write.
Yeah.
When you are teaching kids how to write, the whole thing is, what is the story you're telling and how do you tell it with clarity? So I have been teaching them different methods. How do you do sort of a one sentence summary? The protagonist must do X, or this is the consequence. And that took what was fun about that was it took a kid who tends to be very literal, very spectrum kid, was very literal, who was writing a fantasy story, because that was the assignment. And I gave him that, and all of a sudden he came up with this whole beautiful story about a clumsy element who had to save the universe.
Hmm.
And it was really fun because all of a sudden he's like, "Whoa, what would happen if he didn't save the universe? Oh, this is what would happen." Like it was able to get him past that. Snowflake is a big one where you write the sentence and then you take the sentence and turn it into a paragraph, and you take each sentence from the paragraph and turn that into a paragraph and so forth and outline that way. I'm not really good at that piece of it. That's a little too disciplined. I grew up at a time when girls didn't have ADHD. So when I was diagnosed as an adult, it was like, oh, thank you for explaining it to me. But that's really how I tend now. I tend to be a little bit more focused in my outline. I will never be that Jeffrey Deaver. Here's 32 pages of my outline before I write my book.
Yeah.
I will never be that Lee Child. Like, oh, so what am I going to do today? I'm sort of, I like to think I'm in a happy middle now.
That's good.
So
Well, if it wasn't for ADHD, we wouldn't have books like Harry Potter,
this is
So,
true. This is true.
it's not that bad. But
No.
really, if you think about it, it's also Star Wars. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we wouldn't have Star Wars if not for ADHD.
I'm a big fan of that Lester Dent Pulp Fiction method.
Yeah.
That's sort of like, and it was funny because I was teaching that once to my class, and one of my students was like, "Oh, when are we ever going to do that stuff?" And it was during the pandemic years. So when they were eating lunch in the classroom, they weren't supposed to be talking, and I would have, because I had a Disney Plus account, we'd watch a Disney show. We went through Gravity Falls, and then I introduced them to Wander Over Yonder,
Oh,
and of course Wander is the classic Lester Dent story. It's you have the hero and you just keep piling stuff on him and piling stuff on him and piling stuff on till finally at the end it all gets resolved with a punchline, you know? And so it was one of these things that we happened to be watching one because he's always it never hurts to help type of guy, sort of like Eek the cat. And we're watching it and they're laughing. I was like, gee, I wonder who would ever use that method of writing I was teaching you earlier. Hmm. A kid had a couple words for me that I was like, and we don't use those words in school. You know, but yeah, that was fun things to do, with fifth graders.
that sounds like fun, Carla. So,
Yeah.
if you're okay with it, could I know your social media? For
Sure, I do. Well, I write steampunk under the name Frances DeLisle.
Hmm.
It's a nod to a professor who was like, yeah, you need to embrace this piece of you. And so it wasn't quite her name. Delisle was her last name, but
Okay.
so Frances is on Instagram as Frances Delisle author,
Hmm.
and she also has a web page. And I have a couple of steampunk stuff out there. I'm also on Ream Stories and Substack as Frances Delisle. And Frances is with an E, the way you tell the difference. Frances with an E is a woman because E for her and I is for him.
Yeah.
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 Which that was one of those things I remember learning as a kid. Went, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
I hope people take a note. Doesn't that come
yeah,
from French? I'm not sure.
probably.
So before you go, could I show you a shop that I'm starting for the anthology? Hopefully
Sure.
it can
I'll
get
take a
out
look at
there
it.
and more people know about it because it's going to help me pay the editors and artists for the
Yeah.
book. But some of it's cool. I want to make something sports themed. Maybe you could recommend something. But
Okay.
I'm using Redbubble. You know Redbubble?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so I got a Redbubble shop, and there'll be a link in the description of the video
Okay.
where people can go and see
I like that.
different versions of the book logo.
Yeah.
The book, yeah, here's the book logo right here. It's just harder to see from the screen, but
Yeah.
they offer me a discount while I'm trying to show this off.
Yay.
So, but what you have to do, a lot of people don't realize you have to click one, scroll down, then click
Yeah.
products. Otherwise, it's hard to find them all. And there's a lot of different things. There's even cat stuff you mentioned.
Yep.
Cats. So there's stuff for animals and shirts. What's your impression of this when you see it? And you can be honest.
Yeah, I like it. I think it feels more sciencey than literary to me,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay.
It would be nice if you could have the planet doing this.
A good idea.
Um,
There's one idea to put the book cover itself on something because with Redbubble, as long as you have the art, you can just put it up anywhere. So that might work for that kind of idea.
yeah,
Okay. Thanks for
I
your
love it. Yeah.
information. And thank you for your impression on that and for joining me tonight. Well, it's
Yeah.
daytime for you, right?
Yeah.
What time is
Yeah.
it over there?
Yeah. Not quite lunchtime yet. So, yep.
Okay. Well,
Well,
thanks.
it's
Enjoy
been
your
great
day.
talking to you.
Great talking to you as well.
Okay. All right. We'll see you.